What's up, y'all? It is time to finish the Weiser section of the Residential Locksmith Starter Series. I just realized that today because I had a couple of the boxes that I'm actually working on right now, restocking specifically my LSDA stuff. Needs a few deadbolts and stuff for the truck, but I just realized that we do need to finish off the Weiser section of the Residential Locksmith Starter Series because I've got the box of Weiser in here and it'd be a perfect time, and it's time to be done with it because, as some of us know, Weiser's done with us.
Staying up north is the end of US Weiser.
Us being Americans, that is. You Canadians can keep it. We don't want it anymore, actually. I mean, it'd be nice to have it, but, you know, it's Kwikset. It's all Kwikset. So we've done Kwikset rekeying videos for the starter series back there. I don't know how I'm going to put the thing up, but basically this is just going to be a short talk about the current Weiser being in the last 15 to 17 years when they switched to the Kwikset frame. It's pretty much just all Kwikset, so let's take a look at them. Okay, things happened very quickly just then. I set my phone up on the tripod to record, and then it fell over, and the clip broke. So, yeah, I'm just going to use the GoPro for the rest of this video because I can't find my other thing. Just, I gotta get a stool. It's too much for me. Oh! Stools make the best tables. Come on. All right, just a quick rundown. There's basically two different grades of Weiser, how it's always been. Just remember going back on the different styles of knobs, there was a cheaper or more affordable grade, and then there was a heavier duty grade. Basically, Beverly and Yorks are the two lighter grades of locks, whereas the other ones are like a Phoenix or a Troy, and they have bigger knobs and they're a little bit more solid. Just like with the deadbolts, there are the cheaper and then the more expensive deadbolts. What they used to call L series and X series. L series was the lighter gray, which is the same as the L series with the knobs, and the heavier duty were the X series, and I only have 2 or 3 of these. I did not sell a whole bunch of the heavier duty line of deadbolts, even though when you go back on history, you had the lighter grade deadbolts and you had the bigger or the heavier duty, quote, heavier duty grade deadbolts. This went with that affordable line, this went with the Troy. So when they shifted to the Kwikset based frames, they did the same thing. They kept the same thing. If you had this and the older knobs, the tubular knobs, Richmond I think it was, then the Beverly is the tubular knob, the York is the round version of the knob. And then with the deadbolts, if you had those, you would use the L series deadbolts, which are pretty much just Kwikset deadbolts with some significant differences, which we'll talk about when we take it out. And then the heavier, quote, heavier duty deadbolts had the through bolted trim like this, still with the newest one, but redesigned obviously. So that went with the Troys and the Phoenixes and the bigger knobs, and the L series went with the cheaper knob series. So, all right, let's take a few out and I'll show you what I mean. So I've got most of old and new laid out side by side, and we're going to quickly go over the two most common new ones being the York and the Beverly style. And these are the direct comparison, or the direct newly manufactured version of the Richmond and the York. The York stayed the same, and the Beverly actually came from the heavier duty series. So here is a York from back in the day, the old style, old style. Push and turn, has no shroud. The Huntington, Huntington had the shroud. Same way with the Richmond and the Beverly, they both look the same. They're both conical shape, but these had the extra support for the latches as they were made then. So that goes in, supports the latch, and then the screws are at the 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock position instead of, that's another way you could always tell the screws at 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock position, or 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock was the quote heavier duty locks, or the A series as they were known. These were the Crown series, so this would technically be the new version of the quote Crown series, and this would be the A series, your Troys, your Phoenixes. I've done videos on these several times, and I've pointed out how the newest gens of them these were always popping off. Like, even by pushing in this dimple and tapping it in, you could never get it to stay just right. And they are also now designed with this twist style fastening system, which does make it easier. But even though I always felt like they would come loose, not as many came loose. They do come loose and pop off, and I see them misinstalled. But when they're misinstalled by the homeowner and you have one screw a little bit shorter, what happens here is they push it in, turn it, and see it only grabs the one screw, and then this pushes up and bends the tabs. I see that quite a bit on these that were self-installed. So that's one thing you definitely have to watch out for when you're putting it on the door. And using this system is make sure your screws go beyond the edge of the door by about that much on each one. And you got to make sure they're level when you're putting them in, so that when you push this and look inside to see which way you twist, push down, let go, push in. And then as you're tightening it on the door, I always put pressure clockwise or counterclockwise, depending on which way it is, so that literally as I'm tightening those screws down, I'm holding this in the farthest position that I can be as I'm tightening it down. And Loctite also works well. However, these were the Troys. These are actually Phoenixes. But one thing about, I switched to the Phoenix Troy as a direct replacement to the Troy of the olden days. The one thing that I hated about it was the knob is smaller diameter, and they tried to mimic the look on the inside, but the front just doesn't do it for me. It's a big knob. It's 20 to 30% bigger than it really should be, and I never knew why they did that. Other than that, the latch is the same. One interesting thing about these old Weiser, you could always tell when there was an old Weiser on the door, they were pretty much the only ones that came out with this plastic lip that the latch rides on. So if you ever see one of these, this is definitely a Weiser original latch that were put out, you know, for years and years. And when they moved to Kwikset, obviously it's a Kwikset-style latch. So you have your typical push in, slide it through, let go. Thing I don't like about these is they have the rounded tops to fit the Kwikset latch style, whereas I feel like having the square is a little bit better for shifting and such. Gives a little bit more room, but this is just your standard, pretty decently thick, standard thickness strike plate. Also, the finishes for a while, they were really popular in other finishes. So you had satin nickel, dark pewter, you had several other ones. This was back when they introduced this line. They were proud of it, so they had every flavor imaginable. Nowadays it's just satin nickel, dark bronze, bright brass, and then antique brass, which is this color. So that is the differences in the knobs. A series or the Troy, the Phoenix, the bigger ones.
I have results from multiple sports. Which one would you like?
Oh,
baseball,
no.
basketball, cricket, football.
And before I start putting up the knobs, I will note one of the more unusual things about the new Weiser, or the Kwikset Weiser, is they stopped going below 6 depth. Probably because they're designed like Kwikset. They're still Weiser depth, so you might say, well, that's because most Kwikset are stop at 6 too. That's not that. Their 6 and their numbering system is still Weiser cuts on the board up here. It is just they stop at 6, and some have said it's because of how the plug sits in there. It really won't take anything more than a 6. I think it'll go up to 8 or 9. So I don't know why they did that, because a lot of the old school Weisers often come with 7, 8s, and 9s in them. However, you're never really going to see anything greater than a 6 on any of the new Weiser keys, which is pretty much everything in that bin. So 32423, 40366, 30030. A lot of them have O's on them. 23441. I think they figured out that that's cheaper on the cutter when they don't have to cut as much. So you're going to see, well, you know, when this was popular, you would see a lot more of that. Even this 00415. So yeah, you don't really see anything under a 6. Every so often I'll see a 7, but it's pretty rare. A couple of interesting things to note on the deadbolts is they always sent, same thing with the keys though, nothing under 6 or 7. With the single cylinder X, or what they call the X series, it is built just like this. So if you had a smaller diameter hole, which was common for old Weiser, you would just take this off. This served as your quote shield. So this was adaptable, and there's a flat. So with the Kwikset version, it is fixed on there, so you can't take it off. So that's one advantage to Weiser. And with the double cylinder, you had the hollow through bolts that we see on Kwikset. They took that design, made different kinds of bolts, I might say. And then it had, you could do 2 of the regular Phillips screws to hold this cap on, which screwed into those hollow bolts. In case you haven't seen them, we've probably covered this in another video, but this screws in and then this screws into that. It did come with 2 anti-removable screws that there are tools that you can remove it with, but that basically you screw the bolt in through there just like that. This goes on and this tiny screw goes in it. So if you secured it with this non-removable, quote, non-removable screw, which often you could get it off with a flathead. Only difference about those is, number one, all deadbolts used to come with this super thin Weiser strike plate. The numbers on it had different numbers. This one is 5051, but they were really, really thin for a deadbolt. I mean, this one will bend pretty easily in my hand. And then that's where these came into play to replace it. These are the new style. They're still fairly thin, but the funny thing is in every box, these are the X series, they used to send out plates that were like this, Weiser security plates, that are shockingly similar to the LSDA security plates that come with grade 2 deadbolts or grade 1 deadbolts. And that's what these screw packs are for on those. Let's get one out that's the right color. So it comes with 1 3-inch screw, 1 shorter screw, and then a couple of little bitty really, really short screws. So the theory was you would use this ideally, put the larger next to the frame, just like with any security plate. So you had your 2 long screws going into the center of the door. These were in case you had a side light on your door. Obviously you couldn't use this because it'd blow through the side light wood. You'd have to use a shorter. And then these super short screws are just used on this edge because they're not really doing anything anyway. This provides the security. So, but they used to come with these plates, and then they started coming with this standard plate, but they always sent the long screw packs. And you're like, well, why don't you use it for, the head sticks up. This head size is too big for that. It's a number 10 head, has to be a number 8 head for that to sit. Now, if you have a gap in the door, that's not a big deal, but what if you have a really tight door? Also, it's supposed to be flush. It's not supposed to be like that. These are supposed to fit like that. However, if you're relying on your security for your deadbolt with this pretty thin plate, then you don't need to. You need to order some thicker, better quality and yeah, use your screws from your screw pack for it. You can probably run by a locksmith and get these by the dozen if you need them, because we have plenty of them. When you're rekeying them, you do have to back the screw off. We're going to grab our vessel rubber handle, and you do have to back this off or remove the cylinder completely to be able to get your removal tool in there. So in this position, we can't get to it. Move this out of the way. You can see there's a lip right there, so we can't get to it at all. So by backing out that screw and then pushing up with your fingertip, you can get the screw, the C-clip off with your pickle tool, just like that. Beep. Put that back in because we don't need to take it off. But just don't forget, and you shouldn't forget, you should catch it if you do forget, to retighten this. When you get to the door, you should be checking your key, and you would then notice that you forgot to screw it down. So yeah, don't forget to do that. Same thing with the interior cylinder. So yeah, that's just kind of funny that they still send, even with the quote cheaper deadbolts, which I'll show you that. See, look, so there's the pack. But if we look in here, there is only going to be the regular strike plate, and in fact comes with even extra screws in there. So they've kept sending the pack forever. There's no need to send this. Take a look at that. It is your traditional Kwikset deadbolt with one minor difference. Look at this. It actually has this is one of my favorite things about the Weiser deadbolts. It has this inner shield for small holes, and it's got a lead or pot metal, whatever, actual steel pot metal. It's not aluminum. I'm surprised about that. Maybe an aluminum mix, but yeah. So 2 1/8 inch hole, boom, take that off, boom, into a small hole it goes. And on these, you can just do them just like a Kwikset deadbolt, because literally it is exactly a Kwikset deadbolt with a wider cylinder. So there you go. We'll go ahead and put a couple of knobs on. Y'all all know how to put Kwikset deadbolts on. That is probably one of my easiest, most DIY basic task ever, so we don't need to cover that. But we will put on, I'll show you what I was talking about with that twisty thing. I think that's kind of the most important thing of this whole deal. One other thing I'll point out real quick is, thank God they shifted from, these were a stocking nightmare because they went through several different box sizes for the past 15 years. These were a light cardboard. Thank goodness that they moved to a heavier cardboard box. Canada's #1 selling lock brand. Funnily enough, again, comes with the small strike plate, even though it's a heavier duty lock. Comes with the extra screws for the security strike plate that they don't include in here. The latches are basically Kwikset latches. I mean, literally, with just a different faceplate on them. So, just like the Kwikset. And then this guy is the same as the one we have out. So, just showing you, at least they started making better boxes, because those just fell apart. You can kind of tell, huh? Alright, so this is the typical screw pack that comes with the A series, Troy's Phoenixes. Have 2 short screws and then 2 longer screws. They intend for you to use the longer screws for the strike, which is a good idea. But if you're a locksmith, you should have a supply already of these. And I actually like taking these and using them for the latch area with a properly drilled hole. All right, these come out of the box set to 2 3/8. To adjust the back set, all you do is lift up these little bars right here. It even has a little, I believe, a little arrow there, so you would lift up on both sides. See what happened there? Let it up, drop it, drop. Just make sure both sides seat in that slot. So 2 3/8, boop, 2 3/4. Easy as pie. So we're gonna go ahead and use the longer screws in these holes. I moved it 2 3/4 because that's the preps that I'm using it on, but most times it's gonna be 2 3/8 for your house. Oh my God, Jason's using a power tool. Make sure it's sitting right in the hole, because the first time I screwed it in, it was not. Another reason why I don't like impact guns to do this. is it can just over tighten. There's kind of a finite, like, it can't be too tight, otherwise it just won't work right. So don't over tighten with an impact gun, y'all. Just gonna back that off just a little bit. Grab our knob, put it on. Another bad thing about these compared to the old Weisers, you could just flip it upside down. Well, with Kwikset, you know, they're kind of handed. So at this point, if I'm not a locksmith, I got to put this on my door this way. Guess what? I have an upside down keyhole that I got to deal with. Unless I learn how to get a pickle fork and pop out the cylinder and replace it. So remember what I told you about these screws having to be equal, as well as extending out of the hole about a 1/4 inch. Eyeball it. It's not something you have to measure. We're going to screw these down because this is an 1.5 inch thickness door. I'm going to stand up and look down at it to make sure that they're about equal and they're sticking out about where they need to stick out. And look at the inside of this so I know which way I'm twisting. In this case, it is counterclockwise. Heck if I know. Push in all the way. Remember, on these you do have to push in to get it to go through, just like Kwikset. Push in, pull out, and extending just beyond the hole there. Put this in. You may actually have to turn this to get it to go on. If you make sure it's, you know, going on correctly with that half moon shape. If it won't go any further, that means that you need to turn this to get it to go on all the way. And then we're going to twist, let go, and we see the screw holes come out. We've covered all this on the Kwikset videos, but I just want to go back over it again because these were always kind of the hardest ones to deal with. One thing about Kwikset is they got this flop, even though this is the heavier duty ones. Kwikset, Weiser, same thing here in this case. Now, I hadn't mentioned Kwikset Smart Key. While I'm tightening these screws down, we'll talk about Weiser Smart Key. Weiser Smart Key is actually Kwikset keys. It's not the thicker Weiser key. A regular Weiser key will not go into the keyhole for a Kwikset. It uses Kwikset depths. It is a standard Kwikset Smart Key, not a Weiser key. It may say Weiser key, and then when they put them out, they were all just Weiser. They just said Weiser, and then they came along and were like, oh, we better put Smart Key on it, and then KW for, you know, Kwikset Keyway. It's just a Smart Key cylinder using a Kwikset Keyway branded Weiser. It's not actually Weiser depths or spaces in the actual slider mechanism and all that. So we're going to try the inside, turn, we're going to tighten these down just a bit more because it does stick out a bit. Normally you would tighten these down all the way before you tighten those two screws to keep it from going into a bind, but we have that, and we check our key, which is upside down. If you have that, you need to pop it out. Buy one of these little pickle forks on Amazon or wherever. You can probably find them everywhere. Or a Kwikset rekey kit. It'll pop it out. And so there you go. That's that. Deadbolt goes on just like a Kwikset deadbolt. We've already covered that. So thanks for watching, y'all. If you have any questions or comments on this or any other videos, stay tuned. We'll have LSDA. We'll have some national stuff. Maybe some Westlock, and a couple other, because we've still got about 5 or 6 to 10 videos for this series. Make sure and hit that like button, and I can answer the phone. So